It's all the differences. It's all the differences.
It is, it's a big deal.
The first. Bunch of guys from this area. The guys have bought new shoes. They're flat, they drop, they buy flats.
Okay, we're up, Casey?
Yep.
Okay. We'll call the February 7th, 2022 meeting, Blackwood City Council. We're please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilmember Byerly.
Here.
Councilmember Conklin.
Here.
Councilmember Missouri.
Here.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Here.
Councilmember Brinker.
Here.
Councilmember Morris.
Here.
Mayor Long.
Here. Approval of the minutes of the January 17th regular meeting.
Move approval.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Excuse me? Hello? I have a
Yes.
motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Doug. I did not hear you first. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Public comments and requests. Craig, do you have any public that wants to comment this evening on anything?
We have just the use requests, and I believe members of downtown Rotary are here via Zoom.
So who's here from the Rotary?
Hi, it's Diane G. Claghorn, and Sue Faust is also here. We're here to ask if we are able to put in 2 more Little Red libraries this year. And I know that Mr. Wilson will probably pick the place. And we also had a request to use the Triangle Park for the Flags of Honor project over Memorial Day weekend, and the Angel Light project we do on 9/11.
Casey, those things have been submitted?
Yes.
Okay. What's the wish, council?
Well, I'm a fan of the little library thing, and I think it's a great patriotic thing to use Triangle Park, so I approve the request.
A motion
My motion, yes.
and a second. Any further discussion on the issue?
I suppose those book things are what you might call little red reading hubs.
Yes, it would be. Any other comments or questions on the motion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. The request, Lockhaven Jams and Zindel Park.
Soon, Diane, you're welcome to jump off if you want, or you're welcome to stay.
All right, thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Hey,
Thank you for all you do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.
And the Community Life Director will present the next 2 use requests.
Yep, we have a use request from the Clinton County Arts Council requesting the closure of East Main Street for their annual LH Jams Fest, August 13th through 14th. They're requesting the closure begin at 3 p.m. on August 13th and extend through August 14th, following the format of the pedestrian mall. They will have their typical vendors and music throughout the day and work with me to coordinate the certificate of insurance as well as the PennDOT application as well. And then we have a use request for Zindel Park on May 14th for a small wedding ceremony from 2 to 4 p.m.
Block Haven Jams has that gone to PennDOT for the closure?
Yes, they would need to apply to PennDOT for the closure.
What's the wish, council?
I have a question. That's a Saturday and a Sunday, not a Friday and a Saturday.
My apologies. It should be the Friday and Saturday. So the 12th and 13th then. Yep, the 12th and 13th.
Based on a change, do I have a motion?
I move approval of both requests, subject to the change of date.
Second.
Motion for and second. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yeah.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Councilmember, did you say something during that I missed? Okay. Speak up because I'm
by saying it.
30 years of playing in bands. I'm deaf as that.
No, I'm good.
So are we.
Any other things under public comment, Craig?
I had none, Your Honor.
Okay. Unfinished business. City engineer Gwen Dobson. Foreman. Update on the dam improvements.
Mark Glenn, president of the city engineering firm, Glenn Dobson and Foreman, and secretary of that firm, Jim Valley, both of whom are PEs, are here tonight to first give an update on where the city is in the process of the improvements that are required by DEP for Ole and Keller Dam, as well as the well field exploration for supplemental water sources. All this is about a $27 million project that DEP is requiring in the interest of public safety. So I'll turn it over to Mark and Jim.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to address council tonight and to provide you an update on the dam projects and also the future water supply. Warren H. Old Dam is a project that is a compliance project with DEP due to the nature of the dam, which is high hazard, and the fact that the existing spillway does not meet current criteria by the Department of Dam Safety. On December 15th last year, we received a permit from DEP for various improvements at the dam, which includes a parapet wall that will be installed along the entire crest of the dam to be able to put more water over the spillway that we've determined is sufficient in terms of the structural resistance to the increased flow. However, there is some certain concrete rehabilitation work we need to do at the dam. And also we need to install a new terminal structure or stilling basin at the bottom of the dam. There are additional improvements that were also permitted, including revising the intake tower mechanical work, installing a control building on top of the tower, and putting in an access bridge that would permit future safe access to the dam for operation and maintenance. The phase one project is just the parapet wall and the concrete work required at the spillway. The second phase is the terminal structure, or pardon me, the work at the intake tower and associated mechanical work and access. We have applied for Penvest, submitted an application on February 2nd, and that is currently under review. We're hoping to hear a positive funding consideration at the April meeting of Penvest. The cost of that project is estimated to be $5 million. However, the second phase of the project cannot be done because it will involve a substantial lowering of the pool. And we'll be getting into that later as to why we really can't do that at this time due to the other considerations. The second project would be the work at Keller Reservoir. And currently, we are into some preliminary design work on that project. Also, we just recently completed test borings at the dam. The preliminary design work has been completed for the new spillway, and that is being circulated to staff for review and comment. Suffice to say that the reservoir spillway will have to be able to take twice as much water than what currently exists at the existing spillway. There are other considerations we're going to have to look into based on the borings. We found some substantial fracturing of the dam foundation and left abutment, which is near the existing access road. We have a strong feeling based on the results of that, based on some input from professional geologists, that the dam does leak and leaks rather substantially. So that is going to involve probably some drilling and grouting work to seal up some of these cracks. And also, we are going to need to put on the downstream slope a drainage blanket in order to safely collect seepage that may go through the dam. Currently, the bottom portion of that dam is saturated, and DEP will want to see some kind of means to safely collect and control the seepage through the dam. The estimated cost of this project now, which is not firm, but we're talking in terms of magnitude now of about $15 million. That project would be done concurrently with, or shortly thereafter, with the phase 2 work at Old Dam. Now, the reason we can't do these projects sequentially is because by taking one or the other reservoir out of service, we're placing restrictions on the water supply. 2 years ago, we had a 10-inch deficit in rainfall, which lowered Old Dam dramatically. And without rainfall, the latter part of the year, we may have been looking at an emergency source at the river, which also occurred in 2007 with the grouting project. And it's been the consensus that we really need another water supply here as a supplemental source to be able to do these projects. I'm going to turn that over to Jim Balliet now, who's going to talk about where we stand with the well project.
Yeah, so just quickly, in the search for additional water, obviously the sources are your heart of your system. You have two options. One is to pull from a surface water source of anything that pinches, obviously the river. And the river has very flashy water quality, becomes very turbid during runoff events. The other is the development of groundwater. It's much cheaper to treat groundwater than the surface water source. So we hired a hydrogeologist, Jim Cassaberry, in 2018, and he looked within a certain distance of the entire service area, and he found one of the best places to drill that meets all the criteria for DEP. It was in the Youngdale area off McKinney Road, and we drilled several test wells there to determine the geology and where we could find adequate and water, and not only of adequate supply, but also quality. From that test well drilling, 2 wells were developed, one on the Steve Matt's property, and one on the Quaker Hill tract owned by Greg Esterman. And those wells were initially test wells. They were developed into production wells last year and pump tests to get an idea of the amount of water that's available there. We feel each well is capable of providing at least 500 gallons a minute, over 1.5 million gallons a day in production. The next step now is to
submit an aquifer testing plan to both DEP and the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. That's going to be submitted this spring, this fall. Once we get approval from those agencies, we'll commence that aquifer testing work. And then once it's done, we'll prepare the hydrogeologic report. At that point, we'll know the sustainable yield of those two wells and then move forward with permitting them as additional sources of supply. As Mark said earlier, those wells can augment the reservoirs during drought times, but more importantly, they'll be available for use during the 2-year period that the Keller Reservoir is offline. Yeah, so basically, we're looking at a time frame here that is going to be rather extended. On the assumption we get money for the old dam project this year for phase 1 work, it's possible with favorable funding approval that we could get that project started this year and have it completed next year. The next step is to get the Keller Dam work designed and permitted. And that's going to take, we think, anywhere from 12 to 18 months in order to get to the permit phase. So we're into mid to late 2024 on that. It's possible that we could file for permits to get the wells permitted and also funded through Penvest. And that would occur in hopefully next year, 2023. So that work could be accomplished in 2024. So if that project is funded and built and operating, we'd be in a position then to do Keller Dam in terms of funding and construction over a 2-year period in 2025 and 2026. So we're looking at a 4-year time frame here to do this project. At this time, we're looking at Penvest funding, and hopefully we'll be getting some favorable financing terms in addition to possible grants through the federal infrastructure funding, which is supposed to be funneled through Penvest, at least for water and sewer. So right now we're looking at a possible total project of around 27 million, but the necessary cost to do the wells is about 5 million of that total. So we think that we'll have a good supplemental supply. It's a good quality, that'll be a permanent part of your system to be used by the filtration facility in order to better manage your water supply and consider all the risks associated with droughts that have occurred. Happy to answer any questions.
The first thing you're going to ask, of course, is where is this money coming from, this Penvest money? So the $27,600,000, if the city is successful as it was with the sewer plant of getting about 30% of that in grant funding and the balance in borrowing, it would be a borrowing package combined between the phases of about $19 million. So doing the debt service on that today with the amortization chart, assuming Penvest continues 1% rate, each year it would cost about $750,000 in debt service. And that would be something that the city would reopen the cost sharing agreement with Suburban Water Authority to run through the Central Clinton County Water Filtration Authority budget as a cost sharing measure, so that per flow, the city and Suburban would cover their fair share of the cost of the improvements for the water source they share.
Wasn't the first question I was going to ask, but
Okay.
certainly great information. I appreciate you pointing out that we're not going to draw down. I was here the last time we did that, and then we got hit by the drought at the same time, and lots of complaints about musty or mildewy tasting water because we had to draw from the river for a period of time. So glad that you have a plan that will address that. Questions, Council?
The projected well production was 1.5 million gallons.
Yeah, it's difficult without running a long-term production test, but
Right.
the initial blown yields were over 500 gallons a minute each well. And they're far enough apart that they weren't showing a response. So, but until we run that simultaneous pump test, we won't know for certain. But the initial estimate from the hydrogeologist was 500 gallons a minute, which combines 1,000 gallons a minute, which is roughly 1.5 million gallons a day.
How long would that sustain it? You know,
Well, the well looked at from a sustainable yield, meaning you can pump that rate in perpetuity.
Okay.
The question is, if you're using 2.2 million gallons a day, where's the other 700,000 come from?
right.
And until we know what those wells are capable of, we have some options. We could look at, there's some other potential well locations nearby there. We have a plan in place that we're going to include in the design of the Keller that put a catch basin upstream of it to utilize that water that's still coming down McElhatton Run. And then, hopefully that would, suffice in terms of providing your average daily yield or demand for the system.
Certainly going to be helpful either way.
Yes.
I mean, as far as like we do have to draw down and fix the dam or what have you, that offset the amount. Appreciate your work. Any other questions, Council?
Just that the cost is we're going to share the cost amongst our partners who also share the water. Some of the cost is going to be.
Right, that is what the city would update the agreement with Suburban for the cost sharing through the filtration authority. I realize that sounds complex, but if you think of the filtration authority as the way that Suburban and the city share costs that benefit both parties, then it's through the filtration authority that we have that cost sharing agreement, and we would include the debt service in that, like we did with the filtration authority itself, the building of that. It would come to about $375,000 per year per party, just as a general, at the current amortization over the 30-year life of the loan.
Questions? Doug, Richard, anything? Thank you. Thank you for the update on everything.
So, well, just one more question briefly, and I'm sure you looked at it, so I shouldn't even ask this silly question, but in the Keller Reservoir project, discussing the leakage of the spillway that's there currently, and if the spillway has to handle twice the water that it currently is capable of handling, is it not more feasible rather than creating the curtain to go ahead and just rebuild the entire spillway?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna have here.
Okay,
It's a
I misunderstood that.
Yeah, we've got a design that we've circulated to the city, but before we bring it to council, we'd like to be able to make sure we have everybody on board with the design. But it's gonna be the main cost of the project, complete replacement.
Now, I will say, because members of the Central Clinton County Water Filtration Authority are listening, they did circulate that last Friday at 5:37 p.m. So I will get that out to members of the Filtration Authority who are also members of Suburban, so they can take a look at that too.
Anything else, Rick?
No.
Okay, so authorization to do bid modifications for whole Sunset Pines Phase 1, Cassidy water line replacements from village water storage tank and Piper Harmon.
That's all right.
Oh, it's Tony. That's probably why I did that.
Well, for this
All
next
right,
meeting,
Tony, it's just like the budget. I'm always forgotten. No, we always remember you. Especially with snow removal.
it is now the Tony Stopper show, but I will say, Quinn Dobson and Foreman plays a pretty strong role in a lot of the projects that we do, regardless of department. And Abby's here as well, who also Most of the projects that we do couldn't take place without her having written a grant for them. So a lot of voices here for any questions that you may have. This is a month early, but there are so many capital projects to be accomplished, predominantly because of the ARP Act, but also out of borrowing that we've done, that it's important that we start the process of capital planning and understanding by the public of the amount of work that has to be accomplished this year early. So we bumped that up an extra month, and I'll turn it over to Tony to go over some of those items.
Good use after time, so.
That's it.
Yeah,
I have 3 minutes, so.
2 minutes.
First thing on the list is the schedule. That schedule, Mark and I met between Thanksgiving and Christmas to come up with how we're gonna attack the prior year's CIP projects and include them for this year. Some things to note on that schedule that's outlined right now is we're gonna replace 2 water mains in Casadilla, McElhatton Avenue, and Mackey Avenue. We're going to pave Bald Eagle Street and Race Street. Race Street will be from Main Street to Bald Eagle Street, and Bald Eagle Street will be from Anna Street west towards 9th Street. And then the next big item on that list is Sunset Pines. And that's TBD until we receive the rest of our signed easements back. Now, the large list, as Greg said, using our back money, we came up with an additional aggressive projects that.
Yeah.
All right, so like Parks and Levy, this year we're going to do the Piper Harbor Playground refurbishment. That's just replacing, I think, 2 swing sets and a ball surface. We're looking at Tiger Park. I think that was just approved by DCNR. Okay. And then a new one will be the Hannah Park Park and Ride. We're applying for that. That'll be on the northern side of Hannah Park where people already park. And where I guess the city used to dump some wood chippings, whatever back then. We're gonna actually turn that into actual nice parking ride for people traveling up State Road 20. Any questions for Parks and Levy?
Yeah, on the Piper Harmon Playground, is that block grant money? Is that how much it's gonna cost for 2 swing sets and a fall service? Or is there something else added into that?
There's little things like the fence in the pavilion. Quick, Tony, the parking lot. We're gonna redo the functionality of the parking lot and make it entrance off of Race Street and exit onto the street. But the total budget listed there, that 297,977, is the total amount in the CDBG fund. So if you remember, we shifted a lot of money around into that project. It's being considered our holding project because it's the oldest. So if we don't spend it, we transfer it to the next project, which is Bald Eagle paving. And then I have to keep switching the money around until we expend that. So I don't envision that being that much, but that's how much is in the budget.
Anything unused just carries on to the next project.
Yeah, I wish I would, if I thought that's what the cost was gonna be for it, that's an awful lot for 2 swing sets and a fall service.
Yeah, there is more, sorry. New path and parking lot.
Okay. And the balance in the block grant funding, I understand that.
In the Hannah Park and Ride, I know that that those are the kind of projects that PennDOT is really supporting and encouraging. I assume we have the PennDOT requirements already in hand for that type of project. So my question, I guess, is this: are they going to require you to do test borings there? Because it's long-term fill area,
Right.
they might ask you to drill that.
Well, we may have to do like auger borings, shallow borings
Yeah.
where you're gonna.
It wasn't compacted.
Yeah.
Right.
Just pushed over.
Oh,
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's my concern.
There's gonna be vehicles on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, probably answer is probably yes.
Build up the base more. With that 25 millimeter.
Well, if I could add, the tank repainting, Castanea water line, Old Reservoir, Piper Harmon and Sunset Pines, those are all shovel ready. The design is finished, so as soon as, you get the authorization, they can go to bid.
Residents of Sunset Pines would be very thrilled to hear that.
Okay, streets and parking. I already talked about the local race. We're still looking at Allen Alley and the Parkland upgrade, bringing that from the Water Street parking lot down to downtown on Main Street. We are looking at electric vehicle charging stations. We have 2 locations. I think it was last year, Abby and I showed you a map of where we thought we should go there in the corner lot. Water Street lot. And then parking area replaces, the enforcement handheld unit. Any questions for streets and parking?
Questions on Nope. Keep going.
All right, so on top of the levy, or I guess on the levy, every so many years we do levy relief well testing. This is that year, so we'll go through the project right now. Get the bid documents ready for that. So what they do is, I think there's 20 some relief wells near first quality that they have to pressure test. Make sure they're still functioning. And then we're also looking at installing solar panels on the stop log and on the beach pavilion. These would help with these would help with the lights on the levee to offset those shots.
That's one of the ARP funded projects that council had asked us to look into with subsidizing with solar. Caleb, who isn't able to be here tonight, is getting with, he has a degree in solar from CPI, so he's gonna get with a local rep. And the stop log building is a natural place because that's where a lot of the electricity for the levee comes in. So it would be a good place to look at making that investment. And the electric for the bath facility at the beach goes through there as well. So that will help offset that, which was a priority of council identified.
Next.
Stormwater, Sunset Pines. I spoke about that. City Hall would be the rehab.
We're not discussing that till next meeting.
So this is just an update on the status of them, and these aren't in concrete yet, or they're not. They don't have a check beside them that we're definitely doing them.
They're being focused on right now too.
You're focusing on them
Yeah,
to give us more information to decide whether
Well, some
we
have
do them or not.
some have a check and some are being.
Some are have question mark. Okay.
Anything else, Steve?
No. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
okay, at the airport, following the 12-year plan, we're looking at the hangar 1, 2 door replacements. The installation of self-fueling system. I know that'll be nice to have down there, especially during flying. The basic AWAS installation and rehabbing the road and vehicle parking area. That's it at the airport. Sewer. Always a fun topic. So we have screen repairs, replacements, wear rings, a lift station wear repair. We're actually meeting with Andy Arnold, who went up to Portland a week or two to discuss that. There's a manhole on South Island between Peach and Shamrock that has failed. Right now we have it steel plated off. We need to address that here sooner than later. working with Bob from Windows and that too. Every year, we always have sludge removal for the demolition of the old sewer plant. And Susquehanna sewer main replacement. I think we tried in 2020 to get.
Right.
Yeah. For that grant, we weren't successful, so we're gonna try that again. We see a lot of I&I on that system, a lot of springs.
Can you say what I is?
Inflow and infiltration. So a lot of groundwater enters our system that makes the job a lot easier down there in sewer plant. And then, again, we're gonna discuss the solar PPA to benefit the sewer plant.
So Susquehanna Avenue, that's the kind of project that a lot of the funding for the infrastructure, federal influx of cash is really for transportation, but there is some that is directed towards water and wastewater. And that, the primary way that a local government would gain access to that is through the state. So the federal government is basically giving more money to particular state programs. And it really is a very costly project for the city to do the entire Susquehanna sewer line, but it's a very necessary project in the city. And so financially, we can't afford to do it without some kind of state assistance towards that program. But that would make a huge improvement. That's something that was talked about prior to my even coming here in 2014, that needed to be addressed. Like Tony said, the annual wastewater treatment plant sludge removal, that is sludge that's still in the old plant that was never cleaned up and removed when that was taken offline. So it's kind of a costly undertaking to get that finally taken care of. So we have to explore ways to finance that as well.
That's one that doesn't have a check by it yet.
Can I add on to something with that for a minute? Sure. The digester down at the old plant is falling apart. The bricks are falling off of it, the walls almost ready to come down. We're thinking most of the old sludge is underground, so it should stay underground, but you never know. All the buildings are down there are very bad.
In the old days, they just buried the entire city and started on first. I'm just saying.
New layer.
Well, that's why we have relief wells every 2 blocks. So,
I think he's talking about places like Pompeii.
We do have a demolition estimate.
yeah,
So we have a plan to deal with that? I mean, is that something?
We have that cost. I don't know so much of a plan, but
yeah.
Sounds like we need a plan. Sounds like you're saying we need a plan sooner rather than later.
last time I knew the sludge was explosive when it was tested last. That's, I think it's just digested sludge, right? Correct. It's in the digesters. So yeah. I imagine
It's something we're looking at.
yeah, something.
Nice to know. Okay. Tony, anything else?
Not with sewer.
Okay.
Water, working on most of them next book, and then we're also looking at the modeling evaluation system app, study of that. PRVs, pressure reducing valves, replacing 2 of the bolts, the 6-inch and 12-inch, I believe. Also replacing 15+ year older meters. Castle Township. Quote down below. That's an updated quote from last year when I gave you guys the total amount. What we replace all of the meters. This is the one that are 15 years older. Buying a new vent track for the P11.
So you'll notice in the ARP Act funds, especially in water, and above in sewer, council had not considered the manhole replacement as one of the ARP Act projects. But when it comes to something like sewer, there is no other financial resource, and this is an emergency. And so that's put into that column as a proposal for you that will come before you as a resolution for your consideration. Pressure reducing valves, we weren't aware of how much they were playing a role at the time that we were discussing ARP Act in the numerous water leaks that are taking place. And we do have one valve that consistently is stuck open, which then of course there's nothing to depressure, I guess, that line, make it more consistent. So that of course is leading to problem. By adjusting down the 450,000 that you had requested us to look into for meters to just looking at meters that are 15 plus years old, that brought that down to just about 140,000. And then including in that any of the commercial meters, regardless of their location, that are 15 plus years old, replacing those with much more accurate styles of commercial industrial meters. Predominantly, we're talking about industrial users. A good example would be some of those meters are so large that a low flow of water through that isn't enough to get it to move that you used any water. So American Color and Chemical, as an example, could have a leaking toilet. But because their meter is so large, that amount of water going through that meter would never register as water usage. Thus, it's unaccounted for water. We all know in your home, that's equal to about $120.
Right.
Or more.
So, or more. Mine was 138. So, and that was for a weekend. But now when I leave, I turn my toilet off. But it is something that you don't see in residential meters, but you will see in the larger industrial meters. So you lose that accuracy. So replacing those with much more accurate meters will help in most systems, and we would assume that's true here, in helping us again reduce the amount of unaccounted for water that you read about in the earliest sheets that were attached to Wind Ops and Informant's package. We have been making concerted efforts to bring that consistently down, and something like updating older meters helps bring that down, especially when it comes to large users. So those have been placed into that ARP Act fund column as well, which we will further discuss throughout February and March before you finalize exactly what the capital projects will be. But you can see at the bottom of the page that we were just on, which is the enterprise funds, water, sewer, airport. 522,000 appears just in these documents here. General fund reimbursements were already authorized by council, and those for loss of revenues in 2020. Still reserving $100,000 to start owner-occupied home buyer grants like the city used to provide. And the sewer IT network upgrades were just finished. And those were earlier approved by council for use of the ARP Act for network security down at the plant. Council had approved the refurbishment of the tennis courts at Hannah and the pickleball courts, which cost the city so far $27,561. And a proposal taking down the, I think it was 100,000 in grants to downtown Lock Haven businesses. In discussion with the county and downtown Lock Haven, it would be a $12,500 matching grant if the county were to match that for downtown Lock Haven to hire a marketing firm to do branding and come up with a recommendation on when would be appropriate and where would be appropriate to do marketing as a whole for Lock Haven. And so that does make a commitment so far of all but $62,000 of the Art Act money. So $1 million goes quick. But to give you an idea of what Tony mentioned tonight, just on these two sheets, that's $5.3 million in projects to be accomplished this year, including what Mark presented on, which is $3.8 million, are all in projects this year. This year is $9.1 million in improvements to do not only the city of Lock Haven, but improvements that benefit a lot of our neighbors, that benefit Flemington, Castanea, Woodward, all the way to Walker Township in Center County. Any improvement to sewer benefits an enormous number of municipalities. Water, of course, anyone who's in suburban benefits from any improvement to the city's water source, because that's suburban source as well. The airport benefits the community, but it also benefits visitors to the community. The same is true with our streets, especially the streets surrounding the Piper Administration Building where the county is relocated. So there are marked improvements that I think will be noticeable this year for people. Not everyone will notice an improvement to Mackey and McElhatton Avenues, but I can tell you the people who live on Mackey and McElhatton Avenues in Castanea will be delighted that the city is putting in new lines and that their streets will be paved by their municipality. And they'll finally have some nice, decent looking spaces with brand new water lines that shouldn't leak for 20 to 40 years, one would hope.
Okay, that concludes
Tony Show?
CIP. Down below that, I have a few about, I had a meeting with PennDOT regarding the city lighting along Womack Boulevard and the formal off ramps. PennDOT plans to replace all the lighting this year. The project gets let, so the bid opening date is October 20, 2022. They intend to replace the lights at decision-making areas, so it won't be continuously lit. It'll only be lit at areas where you have to make a turn movement going off Wall Street down on Church. They also plan on installing 2 cameras on the highway signs on 220. So if you log into 501 PA, you'll check those, see how the snow is on the highway. Lighting, and then today got confirmation that today they emailed me and said that they were going to go with higher goals. I think they emailed us last week about that, but it's not too big. So they should cover more area. So
Higher and brighter.
higher and brighter, yeah, so they should cover more area.
More saturation. Will the cost share for electric use be split with the county yet?
We haven't discussed it today.
That's to be determined,
Okay.
how the cost sharing will play out in the end. The upgrade itself doesn't cost the city anything. In the current agreement, once this is all installed and new, regular maintenance of that is the city's responsibility. If this were the current agreement, the city would be responsible for making the repairs. Then the city bills PennDOT 50% of that cost and bills the county 25% of that cost. That's Castanea's share of that cost. So currently having discusses with Public Works, if the city is expected to be a peer in this program, then Castanea would need to be a peer in this program. If the county intends to pick up the cost of one municipality, then the county should pick up the cost of all the municipalities. Because we aren't different than Castania, we're just not called a township, we're called a city. So it's just a form of government, but it doesn't mean that the county and the city are equals. If the county is paying one municipality's portion, then they should pay all the municipal portion. And the state should pay the other portion that they feel is appropriate for them. Now, the state does cover 100% of the cost of signs. There's no cost sharing on that. It's just the lights themselves that are the street lights that we currently split. 25% the county pays for Castania, 25% the city pays for itself, and then 50% the state pays. Now, as a taxpayer, you already paid for your city share, plus you're paying for Castania's share out of your county taxes you paid as a city resident. Plus you're paying for the state share out of your liquid fuels tax if you drive a vehicle. If you don't drive a vehicle, you're getting that complimentary to the state share. Ride your bike more, I guess. You won't have to pay.
So, Tony, did you say a couple cameras?
Yeah, 2 cameras on the highway side.
Will we be responsible for maintenance and anything of them too?
It's all been done.
That's all been
They're
done.
just trying to keep their eyes.
It usually is.
Yeah, they have apparently.
Goes to the command
rising
center.
cables that run
where-
underneath Cassidy Road, right there. They're high.
Anything else, Tony?
No, that's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Tony before we move on? Always the Tony Show, council.
I'll just mention under A3 with council's authorization, these are the projects that we have funding for in the bank right now.
They're the ones with check marks.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to authorize the bid modifications that I mentioned earlier when I skipped on the first time? Bueller? Anyone?
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further questions or comments on the motion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
yes,
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. 5B, letter of response to Dickey LLC.
Your Honor, if we're completed with Wood Dobson Informant, I would ask that they be permitted to be excused.
Are they charging us by the hour being here?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
then,
dig it
yeah,
out.
by all means.
Thank you. We don't get paid. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, press the button.
Thank you.
Okay. Letter of response to Dickey LLC.
This is just for council's information. At council's request, the offer from Dickey LLC was turned over to the redevelopment authority, who subsequently declined the offer as well. And so a letter was issued to Dickey to let them know that.
Okay. I see notice Comcast Q4 2021 franchise fee.
This is just so that the minutes will reflect that the franchise fee from Comcast for the final quarter of last year was $16,303.46.
And 5D, distribution of the state ethics financial forms. These are always fun.
So every year, all elected officials, most appointed officials in the city have to complete the State Ethics Commission Statement of Financial Interest. That's been put in the council members' boxes. It's also being distributed to particular members of boards, commissions, and officers of some of the boards and commissions. And those are due back by no later than May 1st. I will remind you that when completing this, this is actually for the prior calendar year. So you have to think about completing this as if this were completing your taxes. So it deals not with this year, but last year. And those can be returned directly to me. You can also complete them online if you so desire, and you have to put in to email them to me. There are a variety of email addresses you can use and enter, but just make sure that you send that to me. And then those are kept securely in my office.
I just make a photocopy of the one that I have to do every year for the auditors.
Yeah, for most people, they don't change. And if you turn them into one agency,
Yeah.
of course, every agency should match. So if you're in, 2 or 3 different boards that you have to submit it to, you can just submit the same one.
One time. Any other unfinished business?
I had none, Your Honor.
Okay, 6A, new business consideration of annual CDBG resolutions.
And the city planner is here this evening to discuss this.
So I have a lot of resolutions and plans and policies to go over. They're the annually, I renew what needs to be updated, as well as we have the plans and policies that need to be updated 5 years, every 5 years. So first resolutions is the fair housing resolution. This is annual. It will also coincide with the fair housing notice that will be published in the newspaper, as well as the fair housing activity. We are required to do that every year. The next one is also an annual resolution for section 503 or 504, excuse me. This is, nothing has really changed with it. I am still the compliance officer, but we do have to re-adopt it every year to show our grievance procedures for that. The next blue sheet is about the plans and policies. So there are 4 that needs to be re-adopted this year. We have the anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. This is in case we do any housing programs that would need to relocate anyone. Our integrity policy, minority and women's business enterprise plan, and section 3 action plan. These are all basically provided by HUD. For our basic needs, I don't really mess with anything. I think the basic of our federal regulations is what we stick to. So nothing really has changed since the last time, but we do need to make them apparent again.
Okay, so you want to move all the resolutions as one thing that we're dealing with here?
I will move the resolutions, all the resolutions as one vote.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion on this? Call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Byerly.
yes,
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. 6B, consideration of resolution number 2022-06.
This, like last year, is this year's disposition of records. This year it is 16 boxes. We actually have held on to last year's so that we could add these to them once council approves the disposition under the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission guidance, so that we can take them all at once and save a little bit of money.
What's the wish of council?
I move the resolution.
Second.
A motion floor and a second. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
yes,
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. 6C, request from Center Town of College Township and Center County Industrial Development Authority.
This is a request that was forwarded on to me as one of the municipalities in the 15-county region of the College Township Industrial Development Authority. They're seeking a grant from EDA Good Jobs Challenge. And so it's on council's agenda if you are interested in having the city submit a letter of support. This would be the letter, and I can complete that and send that on to them for inclusion in their grant package.
Thoughts? Anyone want to make a motion?
I have a question. Does that industrial development authority cover the whole 15 counties, or is it just Center County? Or are they speaking for 15 counties? Because I didn't see anything at the county level about this. So, and then Cedar Coffee hasn't talked about it that I know of.
This is a 15 county region that they are proposing to do a workforce training program for the benefit of. We are one of those 15 counties.
So this is something College Township is doing.
Correct. They're looking to try to establish a workplace training program for the benefit of kind of the region that we're in.
I'll move the letter of support.
I'll second.
Motion floor and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly,
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yeah.
Councilmember Brinker,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yeah. 6D, reconsideration of Petty Park.
This was a request from Councilmember Byerly to have this re-included in the council packet.
And I appreciate Greg including the information. So it's on page 69 of the packet. We've all seen this, maybe other than Councilman Brinker, who I think has seen it since he's come on board. You know, this was discussed a couple of years ago, officially back in 2019, where we, you know, Tony and Greg and others on staff were able to figure out, you know, here's 4 potential options if and when we would ever decide to do anything with Petty Park. Obviously, lots of steps involved other than item number 1, where the city would maintain ownership, you know, change any of that. And we take a look at potentially doing an RFP of some kind and leasing Petty Park for recreational use only. I just think with all of the other things that we've discussed, not only tonight, but over recent months, where we are faced with some tremendous costs, here we have an opportunity to perhaps reduce our costs and potentially generate revenue for the city. Again, recreational use only for this park. That's outside the city. You know, we talked about that. It's not even in the city bounds. But the demand is there. I think it's going to maintain that demand in future years for people, for camping, RVs, et cetera. I think part of the request, the RFP, if it has to be put in that form, would be to maintain the ball fields that are there. There's plenty of room for camp and RV sites around that. And in the part of the park that we have never even used. So I just think it's time to look at it again. I would love to see staff put together an RFP that we could then put out to find out, is there any interest from private entities that we would then be able to discuss and say, hey, this is a good thing. Let's take a look at it, or it's not a good thing. And we can continue to spend $20,000 plus a year mowing the grass, or doing, as is mentioned at the bottom of the option, where maybe we don't even do that anymore. We turn it back into more of a wildlife area, keep the ball field. So I just think it's time to look at it. It's been brought up for a couple of years now, and I'd love to see us do something that would benefit not only the city cost-wise, but the area as well, to bring tourists and people in to visit our area. So I'm not sure, Mayor, if I would need to make a motion to request staff to do that, or is it one of those situations where if the plurality of council agrees to have staff put together an RFP, then when we can look at that.
I think that if you want to take action to direct staff, you should make a motion that should be seconded and voted on by council. That way, council is giving a directive to staff.
Okay. I would make that motion then, that we have staff take a look at it. Only the lease option, not looking at any sale. That's much too convoluted in my mind. That we take a look at it and see what options are out there.
So your motion is, so I'm clear on this, so we can all know. Your motion is direct staff to put an RFP together of leasing part of Petty Park, because you said the ball fields would remain the way they are. Is that correct?
That's correct. I don't think we would want to mess with them. They're used, and I think
Okay,
they could be utilized at a higher level.
For recreational use, correct?
Yeah, and I think in that RFP, you want to have staff specify that we're looking at camping and RV sites and other outdoor recreational opportunities out there. The professionals will leave the wording to them that we can review at a later time.
Okay, so that's the motion, if everyone's clear. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
A second for the motion, discussion.
Doug, it's still what, although we would have a potential for income from the leasing of that, which would offset our costs at other parks here in the city, why wouldn't you consider just doing away with all of Petty Park and lease it all out, including the ball fields? Because it doesn't reduce our $20,000 a year that we're putting in maintenance up there and money going into it. Park that's out of town. If somebody else could do the same thing with it, include develop it, we might be further ahead. So.
And Steve, that's certainly an option, and maybe that's the way city council decides to go in the future. But I think with the demand that there is nationwide for camping and RV sites, and our area becoming more and more of a destination for people to come and visit, I think it feeds into the desire that all of us have to promote our area, to bring visitors to our county and city. And that's where the development could come from, a private entity for outdoor recreation use.
I agree with you 100%. I'm all for that. I was thinking of the rest of the whole Petty Park. Why don't we get clear out of that business up there completely? Maybe staff will come out with that recommendation.
Right. Yeah, very well could be right, Steve.
We wouldn't make a recommendation to you. The motion is for me to find a staff member who would be able to put together an RFP for specific camping and RV sites at Petty Park.
And we're looking for a private entity to do that. That the private entity would lease that from the city.
I heard Doug saying that it's going to be a private entity that would lease Petty Park.
Right.
They would develop.
Correct.
Okay.
That's
We
why
are
we do the
doing it.
RFP.
Okay, all right. The private entity would be responsible for it. Would that take us out of liability?
And we're still the property owner.
Okay, so we still have the liability of the damage.
So we have to pay insurance on it, but they'd have to pay insurance. on
Right,
it,
the
too.
RFP could include them covering that
Right.
cost.
Right. Exactly.
I'm wondering how we can do this, because, years ago, former Mayor Valella and I championed, let's lease river lots up there. This is a big thing. It's over in Woodward Township. We could be bringing money in on this. And we were told, you can't do that because we can't tell somebody that piece of ground that this person leased is private. That Jeff Brinker can't go over and just go over and sit down at their campfire whenever he feels like it, and because of the laws of how we acquired the property.
It is,
So I'm not sure how we can do this if we couldn't do that.
it is purely public property. So when we were discussing the example of someone leasing it and putting volleyball courts there.
Yeah.
So because the volleyball court is something that private entity put investment in, it has to be completely unlocked and open to the public 51% of the year, unfettered access. For 49% of the year, it could be locked, but then there has to be a number to call for kind of reasonable access, someone to come on demand and unlock that for someone to use. So in the case of the river lot, the way it was explained to us is that 51% of the year, that campsite, if we're talking RVs, would have to be available to everyone in the public, unfettered access. 49% of the year, you could lease it to someone who could put their camper there. But then at the same time, that isn't their private place, they actually lease. So if a member of the public came and sat at your picnic table that you have at your campsite, you don't really have grounds to evict them, even though you paid for it, because it's still public space. It's an odd conundrum.
So then we could have done river lots there, is what you're telling me. Is what I'm understanding?
You could have done river lots as long as the people who rented it had an understanding that if somebody sat down at their river lot picnic table, they can't tell them to leave. Because.
So why would I leave?
That was our point. I mean, we chased after that years ago, same thing, Doug, and I think, we had the same idea, just river lots instead of camping sites. And that's kind of why we backed away, along with the fact that if you're gonna put camping sites down there, that means that you're gonna give 24-hour access. I mean, now there needs to be a lighted railroad crossing there that doesn't exist there.
Again, that would be the job of the private entity, the leasee, to take care of that.
Right.
If they decide that that's not something that they want to do or is not cost effective, then they don't do it, and we keep it as is, a cost to the city.
No, and I'm not fighting you, Doug, I'm just pointing out the hurdles that we ran into before and wondering how we're overcoming it this time when we couldn't figure out how to do that before.
I guess my point is that what harm is it for us to put out an RFP to find out, is there interest? If there's no interest, we're at the same spot we are now. That's fine if that's the case. What if there's interest and we have 2 or 3 legitimate private entities that want to work with us and develop an area now that does nothing except cost us money and is not even in the city bounds?
Are we proposing river lots?
What does it hurt us to take a look at it?
Are we proposing river lots as well?
That's up to the private entity to do, with whatever the stipulations in the RFP are, again, for outdoor recreational use, again, campsites, RV sites. That would be for the private entity to define that we would then approve.
Any other questions?
I'm hesitant to strike a negative note, but if nobody else is going to, Mr. Negative here will. We just had a long presentation on the number of projects that staff will be undertaking this year. And I'm reluctant to agree that we should put this burden also on their shoulders for something which I frankly do not believe is feasible.
Well, then you can vote against it, Richard.
Well, what I'm hoping to do is to persuade everybody to vote against it.
So you'd rather just do nothing with the problem?
Let's keep it in order. Doug, you had the floor. Let Richard speak, and then if you want to rebut it, I'll give you the opportunity. All right? Go ahead, Richard.
Because I really don't want to be in the business of second guessing, but I don't understand why it benefits any private entity to pay the city a rental on 15 acres of ground and then go through the business of trying to subdivide with Allison Township rentable lots when we know that we cannot convey all the normal rights to any to the private entity lessee. And we know that that private entity lessee cannot convey to his potential tenants any of the rights that lessees normally expect. And we cannot do that simply because of the conditions under which the city acquired that property in the first place. And as I say, I'm really reluctant to ask staff to do something that we are pretty certain isn't going to go anywhere. But I take Doug's point that there's a motion on the floor. Let us simply vote upon it.
Okay, Doug, you wanted to rebut something?
No, I'd rather not.
Okay, I just want to keep order and not have it going back and forth, that's all. Nothing. Anyone else?
I want to ask
Go ahead, Gordon.
something. So what all is involved in putting together the proposal for effective? Would it be a time-consuming, horrible process for someone to do? Would it be
I wouldn't use the word horrible. It will be time consuming. We'll have to see if other people have similar RFPs because, you know, we don't just create them.
right?
We have to look at others for a guide, have to make sure it goes through the solicitor. We'd also have to make sure that it's reviewed by DCNR, and they probably want the Department of the Interior to review it as well. Just to make sure that they're okay with what we're requesting people take on as a responsibility, and that they sign off on that. It's not quick. Sitting here right now, I don't know which staff member to tell that they have extra time that they could take that on. You take Tony, for example, and you see the $9 million project we're having. Council asked more than a year ago that we come back to you with an RFP for solar down at the plant. We haven't gotten that finished yet. So you should not expect that if you pass this, that I'm coming next week with an RFP, because that absolutely is not going to happen. But if you make it something that you do want us to do, we will add it to the list, and it will, when it comes up on the list, then it will come back to you.
Anything else, Gordon?
No.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly,
Yes?
Councilmember Conklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri,
No.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
No.
Mayor Long.
No, but only because of the staff time. I don't think it's necessarily that thing to look into. But staff is going to be very busy, but motion passes. And so now council or staff will put together something here.
Greg.
Okay.
Greg will do that. Let's try to remember
That's
that.
fine. Doug, thank you. Thanks for bringing that forward. Appreciate it. Anything else under new business?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, so some FYIs.
Yep, those are just there for your update and information. I do have an item under other matters, Your Honor.
Okay,
It is an action for council's acceptance of the letter of resignation of Patrolman Brian Green, effective March 10th, 2022. Patrolman Green has been offered a position at Ferguson Police Department in Center County and has accepted that position. And so he'll be going there. We do have a regular meeting every other year. The Civil Service Commission meets in February. And so we have a regular meeting this coming Monday of the Civil Service Commission, and we'll discuss the next steps forward with the hiring process to get a list started again for replacement. Brian Green has been phenomenal. He's a Lockhaven University graduate. And because of his role with being one of the football players at Lock Haven University and a student there, his interaction with college-age students who live off campus has really been incredibly helpful. A lot of people know him in town. I'm not going to say the noisiest people know him, but when he shows up and the people are perhaps in need of a warning, knowing that it's Green who's asking you has been very helpful, I think. But he's a great guy. He's going to work at Ferguson, where he has a sibling who works, and he has another sibling who works for the police department in Springtown. So all these Center County kids again. But I do need council's acceptance of that.
Do I have a motion?
I move to accept this recommendation with a thank you to him for service time.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Sorry, he was a little quicker than you in here. Okay, yeah, I think we're all sorry to see him go. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly,
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yeah. Anything else?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Anyone else have anything to bring before council?
Just real quick, as it's starting to get warmer and as our numbers will come down for COVID, just to, consider the mask mandate as we go on, where we're gonna go. Future of that, how it's gonna look, so to, think about that going forward here, so unless process, yeah.
Well, the policy that we voted on and adopted has an out for whenever we reach certain numbers.
Yeah, we were, anyone who was vaccinated last year from, might have been April, if not sooner, until, I guess, about 2 weeks after Labor Day, masks were optional because the incidence rate was so low. It just today go below 500 per 100,000 for the incidence rate. The CDC, excuse me, guidance is below 100 as an incidence rate where masking could be optional and safe. But right now we are headed in that direction, and it seems like if we have 30, we were against 50, so we do seem to be declining quickly, which is great. But at the same time, a lot of that has to do with the availability of home tests, which don't show up in the Department of Health number. So, all of our recent employees who have tested positive for COVID-19 were all home tests. They were not done through the Department of Health or through the testing center. So those kind of are lost in the amount, but there is a new study that the CDC released this afternoon that I want to read that has to do with the combination of immunity for those who have gotten COVID-19 and have also been vaccinated. And now that we have another year under our belt of being able to study what the effect is, looking at that and seeing how to best interpret that for the people who work for the city and rely on us providing a safe and healthy workplace under the Americans with Disability Act, always trying to make the best decision for them.
Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, before we adjourn, I think we should state that we held an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss legal issues. I think that's probably before we get the meeting. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Return. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the time. Good discussion tonight.